This is the Grafton ghost town. So we're just gonna walk around real quick and take a look at the different structures that are left. This is all kind of like adobe mud brick. Pretty crazy. As you look at these structures, imagine the amount of labor to gather the materials, sunbake hundreds of thousands or millions of adobe bricks as you slowly construct these buildings. The backdrop behind the school is the beautiful tan and red walls of Zion National Park. The schoolhouse was built in 1886, and this met the needs of a school, church, and meeting location or grange hall. The lava rock foundation was quarried from a nearby hillside, and the adobe bricks were handmade from a clay pit on the west end of town. The logs were cut from Mount Trumbull, almost 75 miles away. These logs were brought across the Arizona Strip and down the canyon cliffs on the west road near the cemetery. They would hold dances and plays on the weekends. People from all over the settlements on the upper Virgin River would attend. Dances would continue into the early morning, sometimes into the dawn. The last classes taught at this school were during the 1918 and 1919 school year of just 9 students. Students were then transferred to the school at Rockville for the following years. Yep. Teacher Mary Beth Woods recalled the cowboys liked to attend the dances. Working at the Canaan Cattle Ranch, the Barzee Company was from Deseret, Milford, spreading all up north. Those at the Canaan and cane beds would come to Grafton for the dances and social life. Mary said that they could always sing, dance, and it was a real pleasure to have those guys attend. And you would not imagine this would hold up to rains very well. Good solid rainstorm would just wipe out your wall. And that's your backdrop. Got the creek down there. And all the mud bricks. Thing weighs about 5-6 pounds. It is nice and cool in here. Yeah, that's awesome. So you can see it's low ceilings. About 6'2" ceiling. Got nails sunk into it. 5 families from Virgin settled 1 mile downstream from here in 1859. 3 years later, January 1862, a raging flood destroyed that town. Surviving the great flood that destroyed the southern town site, Alonzo Russell and his wife Nancy Briggs Foster and their children moved to higher ground in a tent, later building 3 log homes for his family. The remaining log home is still standing across from the adobe house that we're looking at here. The front porch was the favorite spot for the Alonzos and his family to gather and enjoy music and conversation. Alonzo was skilled as a musician, playing drums and a fifer in his family band. His sons played numerous instruments like the fiddle, accordion, guitar, and mandolin. Music and dancing drew the community together. Alonzo was also a blacksmith. He created eating utensils, farm tools, wagon parts, and shoed horses. He also devised a way to protect his cattle from Indian raids by making hobbles that the Indians couldn't remove, preventing the theft of the cattle. Alonzo had 4 wives. The first was Fanny Molina Royce, who died in childbirth in 1845. He then married Nancy Briggs Foster, having 9 children. The last 4 died as infants. His plural wife, Clarissa... This is funny. You can't make this up. His plural wife, Clarissa Henrietta Hardy, he married in 1853, having 3 children before their divorce, 1 dying as an infant, and the other 2 were raised by Nancy and Alonzo. And in 1856, Alonzo married Nancy's sister, Louisa Maria Foster, giving birth to 9 more children. Louisa lived in the smaller house across the street from the adobe house. Later, this adobe house was given to William Thomas Russell in 1890 to care for Nancy and Alonzo in the remainder of their years. William moved to Hurricane, selling the home to Frank Russell. Both were Alonzo's sons, and Frank purchased the home for $200 and a cow. You can see they just hand smeared mud over the mud brick. Thin layer, maybe about 1/2 inch. Frank and his wife, Mary Ellen, moved into the home in 1917, living there until 1944, moving to St. George as some of the last residents in the town. This note on the barrel, written by Grace Atkin Woodbury, titled, "As I Remember Grafton." It reads, "I have the barrel on the sled and a horse hitched to it, and Ma is anxious to get to her washing if the water is clear enough." Grace was a school teacher in Grafton. She writes that, "I had 40 more or less boys and girls in my school, 7 different grades, all in one room, some as old as I." Really thick walls too.
And then there's a basement too. Let's see how it's
Alrighty, one second.
So slammy.
Here you can see the adobe bricks above what the ceiling would have been. So of course this gets lath and plastered all along here to cover up and help separate the heat. Here's the hatch door that goes down to the basement. I'm sure the thick walls too really help insulate against the heat and cold, but not as good as the insulation we have these days.
I can hear you perfectly.
And we're gonna go look upstairs. All the slots for support boards, I would think. Got some remnants of knob and tube wiring. So at one point somebody added some electrical to this. Here's some of the old timbers going across right here. You can really hear the wind whipping out there too. This is really a cool homestead. You can tell they're using a lot of effort to preserve this as much as possible. You can see the elevation difference that they've made here too.
I won't slam on you, that's a different story. He thinks he's getting alright home.
Thank you.
Sorry I got in your shot.
Oh, you're okay. Louisa Marie Russell was the fourth wife of Alonzo Russell. She gave birth to 9 children, and Louisa lived in this house, which is a small log cabin. This house was built in 1879 by Alonzo for Louisa Marie. It's a simple one-story gabled log home where Louisa raised 6 children. Alonzo and his first wife Nancy returned to Grafton in 1868 after Indian troubles. However, Louisa remained in Rockville, giving birth to 3 more children there. She died in 1917 at the age of 77 and is buried in the cemetery here. You can see the angle cuts they used on the logs to help hold everything together. And then just filling in the gaps with mud. This one shrunk considerably and got pushed out too. Good 2-3 inches. Louisa Marie Foster, being Nancy's sister, living across the street from the larger house, often complained about being stuck in the smaller cabin. So of course I can imagine the torment between the two of those sisters. one living with Alonzo in the large house and the other one being stuck in the smaller cabin. Man, axe hewing this whole timber, my gosh. You can see each individual strike of the axe chipping out the wood. Some rough axe hew. Wow, they found some sandstone with ripple marks from the river. really cool. Their prized piece, being able to cut that down for the hearth. Some additional storage. This was the old window. So we're in the original cabin here and entering the add-on. So that would have been your back window and door. I had to duck under that. Gives you an idea of how really the height of the door and ceilings didn't really matter that much when you're trying to keep it warmer or cooler by comparison. And then this was added in with more mud brick and then leftover timbers. This is interesting. Not sure what this would have been.
I feel tall. Yeah, this is the low seat. Watch your head here.
Well, but what I read about Grafton is they kind of split these, so there's the main house for the wife, and then there's a second house for the other wife. I wonder if this is.
Well, this one over here, this would be the main house. That might be the second house over there.
Okay.
I don't know.
We should keep moving because we're.
Anyway, so back to your.
This is really cool. So again, this gives you an idea of how short the ceilings are, and then the door. So either this was built by a shorter person or somebody that didn't mind ducking under the doorways. And the perfect branch for a swing. At the time I said this, I had no idea what lay ahead in the graveyard, so be sure to stick it out to the end and read the sign. That's really cool. Very well preserved. Of course, the heat and arid climate really helps things not rot. Danger noodle. This would have had a basement too. Let's see if I can block the light enough. Big chunks of sandstone. Man, the amount of effort to move even one of these. You can see they were working it with chisels, trying to flatten it out, because this originally came up. So here's your original surface, and they chiseled the rest of this to match it. My gosh. And this one, that's got to be some tonnage. 1,000 at least, if not 2,000. The only way to move that is on skis. Skidded across the ground. This is some really cool area. This is a cool little valley they nestled themselves into. This is the Ruby Rose cabin, rebuilt in 2020. This one looks like they're currently revamping it. A bunch of door wedges. Again, you've got the rough, this is some big chunks they were able to split out, but rough axe hewn. It's big logs. Yeah. Just a single room cabin. Kind of like what the last one would have been had they not done the add-on. And of course they've got some new
This
latch
is the
systems
location
here.
where Sarah Jane Smith Hastings and William Hastings resided. They were some of the first settlers in Grafton in
Looks like they were planning the
1861.
foundation for
They had
another
8
little
children and
structure.
lived a simple life in a wagon box until they bought a dugout right here from the Romney family. The dugout was a small underground room with a wooden floor, a door, and 2 windows. Now it is a depression behind the existing cabin.
And a window upstairs. No ladder going up there.
William passed away in
Potentially
1882
could
and
have been
Sarah
a room.
stayed in Grafton, living in that dugout for over 5 decades. She moved to Hurricane in 1915 and died in 1920 at the age of 90. This log cabin that we're looking at was brought here in 1947 from Beaver, Utah for the movie Ramrod. The roof started collapsing and Linda Atea dismantled the log cabin to save the logs. Linda had the cabin rebuilt across the street from the schoolhouse in 2020. Linda Atea said that the cabin interior had plaster walls and was used extensively in the movie as Rose's home and a dressmaker's shop. Her father always called it the Ruby Cabin, so she did as well. Linda said that her father fell in love with Grafton. He was born in Salt Lake City and he would drive back and forth from Los Angeles stopping at Grafton. We either forged the Virgin River barefoot or walked across the board and cable footbridge or drove across the steel bridge. But we had to open and close many gates along the dirt road to Grafton. I remember walking through the log cabin as a teenager. During my childhood, I came to think of the cabin as a real gem with just the right proportions. Many years later, we purchased the property from Karen, who was a member of the Ballard family. Gradually over time, the log cabin collapsed in on itself. Those beautiful old hand-hewn logs made by the pioneers, the weathering since had made these logs
All the
even
water
more
coming
beautiful.
down is coming into this low spot. And feeding the trees.
We saved the logs in anticipation that eventually we would restore the old log cabin. After thinking about some restoration of the cabin for years, we finally decided this year to start the project. We hired an expert craftsman, Mike Brooks, Brock Wright, and Russell Benzette to work on the project using old photographs to make sure the restoration was correct as much as possible. We treated the new wood with vinegar to make it look old. Old glass was remade to fit the windows. We also plan to excavate the dugout that remains behind the cabin to see what we can find. So thanks to the many who worked on the restoration, this beautiful hand-hewn log cabin has been reborn.
Probably used the old flood method to feed a lot of this area. Let this little stream that's flowing in front of the property come down and flood this low area. With all that water, you can grow whatever you need. And it is quite lush and green still. You can see the overflows. And the wind just whistling between the mountains. That's all you hear is just and the bugs. Distant cow.
Giant ant nest, huge ant nest, like over there where the farm animals are kept.
Oh.
But you see ants everywhere. They're like,
yeah,
they venture out pretty far.
This is a really cool town.
I know, this is really neat. I am so impressed with this house. It is so cute. It has 3 porches.
All right, so this is a cute house, everybody.
This is super cute. It has a huge front porch, 2 side porches. Like, that's crazy.
All right,
it's cute.
For $800 a month, you can rent this. No pets allowed.
If they did turn this into a rental or like an Airbnb, people would totally rent.
Oh, I'm sure.
I mean, I don't think there's power or water.
Oh no, no power, water, or toilet. Yeah.
Did you find the big ant nest in there? It's a mess.
I sent Brandon to go to work in the barn. He's got some bales of hay to buck. And he heard something skitter behind him. Actually nice and cool in here. Not bad. Probably about a 10-degree difference. Family tree. John and Ellen Smith Wood. So this is the Wood home. John Wood and his wife, Ellen Smith Wood, moved to Grafton in 1877 from England. John was a farmer, a blacksmith, craftsman, mason, and he raised cattle. He would make horsehair ropes and hackamores in his spare time. Both John and Ellen were jokesters with quick-witted humor. Similar to their neighbors, the Hastings, this house started as a modest dugout in which they baked adobe bricks for the walls of this house. The dugout is now a cellar, which we will soon explore. The house became what we see now, which is considered large for the time. 3 large rooms, 3 porches, and steps out the west leading down to the cellar. Looking in this room, you'll notice all the ceiling boards are stained in creosote, and the floors are patchwork, which was done later since the floors were more than likely dirt. The biggest clue to this is looking at around the fireplace. You can see the fireplace is sunk in further than what the floor level is. This is a good clue showing that the floors were more than likely dirt and at a lower level. Possibly they just creosote treated the boards, but this is not the original floor level because the fireplace is below it. So I think this originally had a dirt floor. The Woods also built a large log barn, a granary, and split rail fence around the property. Since food was scarce, John and the other men went to Long Valley near Orderville, Utah to plant grain. They had to travel out over the plains and around through Short Creek, Arizona, then back by Kanab, Utah. This journey took several days, and I have a hard time imagining these journeys with the uncertainty of the era, not knowing if you would make it back or if you would become another statistic of a retaliation Indian attack. And as Melissa promised, 3 porches. Got your stairs going down. There's your basement. Starting to think creosote treated. Shut. Ellen Wood died in 1898 at the age of 77 and was buried at the Grafton Cemetery. John moved to Hurricane in 1909, passing away in 1911. Their great-grandson, Luane Wood, was born here in this house in 1911, passing away in 2003 at the age of 92. These almost appear to be window wells, or as if they were going to make a fireplace out of it, but the porch goes right over top. And you can see this is just a termite-infested piece of wood. got another stack of brick and another one of these window well type things. I am genuinely curious what the intent of this was. I believe it actually was supposed to be a window. This is underneath the other porch. It's interesting. All right, let's go check out the old barn. And then we can take a flight. In standard fashion, I'm taking way too long, so everybody's bored and tired of looking at the stuff, so it's just me that's left. I think even Brandon headed back. Same style of log cabin construction. Not knowing initially what this building was, my guesses were completely off, but this is the granary. So you can see both bins on each side of this little structure to hold the grain. And of course, that's just a guess. Not completely sure. Got some cows still back there. And the old barn. Man, that is some massive timbers that are more modern. And then all the old, man, that is a lot of termite damage. So they have rebuilt this quite a bit with more modern wood, leaving the existing structure as best they could. But even that on the sun side is getting just checked. Look at that. Old wagon. That is really cool. All right, we've got to look at the wagon. Here's an old wagon. You can still see the grease packed in there. The amount of work that goes into just everyday things that we take for granted. Simple as getting a shackle that you have to hand forge. This band, the amount of work making one band for a wagon wheel. The amount of work just for everyday living is just insane. What we take for granted. Just to create something like this to move items around. Creating a steel band for a wagon wheel. Sawing all this wood. They even have tongue and groove on it. How much of that was hand carved? Hand drawn? That is crazy. Well, this camera has overheated several times. I actually took it apart to separate the battery out and let it cool off from the inside. But this is some really cool stuff. I'm gonna fly around real quick and we're heading out. Thanks for joining us. This is another cool little side adventure. I like it. Only made it a month.
This one? Oh, that's sad. It did talk about that on the sign.